Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Startup Sense podcast. This is your host, Jonah Lupton, and we have another great episode for you today, as we always do. If you get a chance, feel free to send me some feedback on the show to jonahlupton@gmail.com. I love hearing from all of you. So today's guest is Shea Coakley. He is the founder of a company called LeanBox. They are based in Boston, 50 employees. They've raised a bunch of money in a large seed round. He can't disclose exactly how much, but it is in the millions. And essentially, what LeanBox does is they provide innovative workplace food solutions for companies, mostly between about 25 to 30 employees, up to 800, maybe 1,000 employees. Under that mark, we'll get into all that. But let's welcome Shay to the podcast. Shay, how are you?
I'm great. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Doing good. Oh, thanks, man, for joining us. I appreciate it. A fellow masshole.
I love that. Yeah, that's perfect. The few, the proud, the massholes.
Yeah, especially when you move down south, you hear it a lot. Yankee and masshole all the time.
Yeah, perfect.
Talk to us about LeanBox. What are you guys doing exactly?
Yeah, so we're taking on sort of an organization, sort of infrastructure that hasn't been disrupted in 80 years at this point. Just the blanket umbrella is corporate food service. So, traditionally, I guess in the market, you have the ability to get what everybody knows is like wireframe vending machines, chips, soda, Snickers, the vending machines that you see at every gym and every corporate office in the United States. And then, if you're a 2,000 person office, like a big biotech campus or a hospital, you can go to the big $1 billion companies that are doing corporate food service, so a big cafeteria. So I guess what we're really doing at LeanBox is we're trying to develop technology-enabled platforms and an innovative supply chain and an on-site sort of hardware-software solution that goes towards the majority of the market. A 30 to 700 person office, as you had mentioned earlier, that is looking to implement a cool food program, but doesn't have the space, time, or money to build out a massive corporate food service cafeteria.
And I was going to try to describe maybe why under 30 doesn't work or why over 700 doesn't work. I'm thinking if it's under 30, there's just not enough employees in the office to go through enough food to make it worth your while.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers I described are really just our meat of the bat. So we work with both ends, right? So we have some law firms that have 15 people that are looking to automate their food programs. So, we're in there, but generally speaking, they're not big enough to warrant some of the programs we have. We also work with some big campuses, right? So we have Microsoft, we have HubSpot, we have LogMeIn, and these are, 2,000 plus person campuses that, we play in a lot of different aspects of their food program, sometimes supplementing a cafeteria, sometimes replacing the need for one. So it really all depends. But the reason I sort of talk about our meat of the bat is being 30 to 700 people these are usually, first off, it's one of the biggest chunks of the pyramid just in terms of office size. And then second, it's generally where people start to have some budget to throw at sort of corporate culture generally. And as a subset of that, the biggest thing being, corporate food service. So these companies are looking for innovative ways to sort of upgrade their food program and get rid of just a Snickers vending machine and not spend, $1 million a year on catering. They're looking to solve these problems. They have some budget, but they just don't want to spend an arm and a leg. So that's why I sort of describe that as our meat of the bat. And I go broad saying that we're between 30 and 700 people. It's probably like, if I were to describe our like perfect typical clientele, it's like 150 person or 100 person office, 10 minutes outside the city or 20 minutes outside the city with sort of an initiative to enhance the culture of the office and some budget, but, not millions and millions of dollars. So that our sweet spot is really like that 100, 200 person office sort of range is usually what we're working with.
I mean, I'm sure you still have plenty of clients or customers in the city, but is it a lesser value service in the city only because someone could walk out of their office building and find 15 different sandwich shops within a few blocks?
Yeah, it's interesting. I may have spoken a little soon on that, to be honest. I mean, we're almost split directly down the middle. So it's about 50-50 in terms of clientele that are in the city and clientele that are outside. I describe the pain point of outside the city because I've worked outside the city and I know the pain of you have like a 25-minute journey to go find even like a sandwich that's relatively close by, so that's like a super pain point. That being said, food in the city is really not that easy either. So, by the time, if you're at the top of the John Hancock Tower,
Yep.
by the time you go down, by the time you go down 30 floors and you wait in line with, hundreds of thousands of other people that are also trying to check out a lunch at the same time, it's not that easy there either. So, all that being said, I mean, we're sort of a 24/7 service. So like in the city, you'll find a lot of people that they might be going to get lunch from us if they're wanting to get something without leaving the office, if they wanted to bring something back to their desk. But they might also be going to Dig In or Sweetgreen or, Chipotle. And at 3:00 in the afternoon, when the stomach starts growling and they're interested in a quick grab and go snack, instead of grabbing a Snickers or a bag of chips, they're grabbing something from the LeanBox, like, a cool locally made granola bar or a fruit cup or something that's just like much better for them to fuel the rest of their day.
Right. No, that makes total sense. So what's the pricing model, for your services? I'm looking on the website right now and I see the LeanBox refrigerators that are obviously going into different office spaces. Do you guys charge the company a fee in order to have one of those refrigerators, and then the employees are paying for each item?
I think the best way to describe it is, first off, the answer is that it's very customizable, right? So the best way to do it is to talk about like a typical journey for us. So a typical journey will involve us going into an office and sitting down with whoever has been put in charge with food in the office, which is ever changing, right? So it used to be that HR managers were in charge of implementing payroll and benefits and employee onboarding. Now all of a sudden it's like, okay, you're in charge of culture. So like, go figure out what we need to enhance our culture. Often the thing that they come across as being like one of the most important things for on-site services is food. So then what we do, that's when we come in. We either discover them or they discover us. We go on site and we just usually have a meeting, might be over the phone, might be in person, where we just talk about everything they're currently doing. So it might be catering every other day. It might be a coffee service through an OCS provider. It might be fruit service from a fruit delivery. We look at that whole program and we see what kind of program we can build that, weirdly enough, we're kind of oddly positioned to upgrade programs and also make them less expensive, which is a nice place to be in any market, obviously, just because there hasn't been a lot of disruption in the space. So I guess the micro answer to your question is the LeanBox itself, which is our flagship product. It's the smart refrigerator, the unattended retail sort of system. That piece itself just sort of depends on one of two different models. It's either someone's paying a monthly service fee, and then the employees are paying significantly lower costs than they would at retail for the individual items in the machine. So that's one version. There's another version where employers can decide what sort of subsidies they want to provide their employee population with. So by way of example, we might have a biotech firm that says, all right, we're going to give $20 per employee per week to use at the machine. If they want to go above that, then they're paying for their own food. You might have another office that says, I don't care what people take out of this thing, as long as they're staying in the office, I will cover the cost of it, right? Then you have other scenarios which are a little bit more unique that we can customize. So you might have a VP of sales who says, if any of my sales reps are in the office after 5 o'clock burning the midnight oil, I want to take care of the cost of that food. But if they're checking it out at 1 p.m., and it's normal business hours, then they can put it on their own card or something like that.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, a lot of different customizations. We see people also building in sort of like health and wellness related incentives that come in the form of LeanBox credits. So it might be something as simple and straightforward as like open enrollment's coming up and you want people to sign up for open enrollment a month early. So, you dole out credits to use the LeanBox for anyone who signs up within a month or so out from open enrollment. And then there's some cooler ones that are like, companies doing a 5K and anyone who signs up gets $10 to use. Anyone who completes it gets $25 to use the LeanBox or whatever. So a lot of that's the technology backbone that we're sort of building to make the program as customizable as we possibly can for, a market that has offices that view their food programs and their culture and their budgets way different from one another.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think food does make a good incentive and a nice little perk at times. So, and like you said, it keeps people in the office, whether you're a high paid attorney or engineer or a salesperson or really anybody. I mean, if you stay in the office working hard, rather than going out for lunch and spending 45 minutes walking around the streets or stuck in traffic, that the company benefits from that. So I get it.
Right. And that's exactly right. The employees don't want to spend 45 minutes of their day, going out and hunting down food. And certainly to your point, the employers don't want that. I mean, a lot of these places, they'll have someone who's, being paid a decent salary from the employer, and they want to make sure that they're, best positioned to be as productive as possible. And, sometimes that productivity is just like being able to keep them in their seat, just being able to not have them shave off 50 minutes of their day to go get a salad down the street. So
why did you start this company, and what were you doing before this?
Yeah, so I do not come from the corporate food service space at all. Neither do my business partners. I think that has been tremendously helpful in our journey because we are looking at everything from an outsider's perspective. Everything's on the table. We don't say it's been done this way for 20 years, so that's how it should be done. I came from a very different background. I worked for a consulting firm before I did this directly. I had a job in the front office of the Bruins for a while. Very unrelated fields. My business partner and I, this story will probably change. I'm a little upset that I'm getting this on recording because I think when we IPO and we write the book, we're going to come up with this genius story about how we wanted to disrupt corporate food service, and that's how we started. But I think it's better to be honest. Like, that's not how we started. We started with the idea that we actually wanted to take on like Chipotle, Five Guys, Panera, QSRs, quick service restaurants. So when we originally took on funding, we were really passionate about the idea of that space. We loved QSRs, and we wanted to build a healthier one. The idea was that you could go to some place that is like a Chipotle, but you could do it sort of guilt-free. And there's some other concepts that are cropping up in that space doing quite well right now. We had this interesting thing happen to us where the LeanBox itself was actually like a little side project of that concept. So in a teeny little portion of our business model, we said we wanted to use the kitchen space in the QSR to create food and deliver it to gyms, hospitals, offices, etc. in the area. We got about 8 months into the restaurant concept, had built out, had launched, we're up and running. The restaurant was doing fine, not amazing, but fine. And then we started to see the LeanBox side of the concept just take off like a rocket ship. So it was interesting. We kind of had this aha moment that like I wish we hadn't invested as much time, money, and resources into the original portion of it, but we never would have sort of, quite frankly, and literally like fallen into the corporate food service space had we not taken that journey. So about at that 8-9 month mark into the restaurant, we sort of started to huddle up internally and even have some initial conversations with our investors to say, look, like, we had a pretty good concept before. I think we have a great game-changing idea, which is to try and take on a disruptive innovation in the corporate food service space, which is in desperate need of it. So it's interesting. We kind of, I used the term earlier, but we really did kind of fall into this space. My business partner doesn't come from the corporate food service background. This was just something that we landed in and decided that like there's a huge pain point with people getting cool, unique, interesting food Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 or, 8 to 6 or whatever it is,
So after you guys pivoted from LeanWorks into LeanBox, how long did it take you to have a product ready to go to market?
So we had been sort of like building it along the way. Now, I will say back in, 2015 or so, late 2015, I will say that our product that went to market was not the most beautiful product that you would ever imagine. It's certainly not what it is today. So we're talking refrigerator with wires hanging out, with the tablets shutting down all the time, freezing up. I specifically remember being at a law firm in Boston and sometimes I would sit in the cafes where we would have our LeanBox and just sort of watch users interact. And I specifically remember a time where someone had checked out a sandwich that was supposed to be like $5 and change, or for late $4, and it charged them like $720. So I had to go up and fix that. And we babysat the things when they went out to market, and we were really just sort of testing the concept, which the concept was working really well, but early on, frankly the technology was not. We had tried a bunch of different iterations of the technology, RFID, weighted shelves, and we knew what the long-term vision of the concept was, but for better or for worse, there wasn't a hardware or software solutions provider in the market that was doing it. So that became core to what we are as a company. I mean, we are the service that implements this, but we're very much a technology company as well, like from a hardware software standpoint. We had to sort of create that to be able to do what we wanted to do.
Did you have to hire a bunch of hardware people, or did you outsource the building of the fridge just to another firm?
Kind of a combination of both. We pick and choose our battles as much as we can. We're very, very heavy on software internally. So when I say we're heavy on software, I mean the point of sales is completely ours, homegrown from scratch. The mobile app with which users check out from the LeanBox, that's all our mobile app development internally. And then the platform that the companies sort of run their program with is all ours and homegrown. Hardware, we sort of did a little bit in combination. We have some folks internally that are hardware experts, but we've also worked with some outsource firms that have been able to both help us create the roadmap for the hardware, and then we actually outsource the actual manufacturing of machines now. So we're not doing that internally in our offices. We work with a big firm that is sort of creating the machines spec to order.
So who were some of your first clients? Are you able to give us any names?
Yeah. So one of our first ever paying clients, I'll never forget, is Rochester Electronics. They're still with us today. I'll never forget their CEO taking a chance on us really early, knowing that we didn't have a lot of clients in the field. And I always have a lot of love and respect for the early adopters. HubSpot was another early adopter of ours, which is very cool for us because they're so much at the forefront of culture, especially, nationally. But, if you work in the New England area, particularly Boston, Cambridge, HubSpot is often seen as like the cultural epicenter, So then beyond that, like a lot of the other usual suspects that are sort of early adopters to ours, LogMeIn, Uber, Ernst & Young. We work with a lot of commercial real estate firms like CBRE, JLL, Boston Properties, that kind of thing. So we've been lucky enough to have a lot of really cool marquee names that are, as I mentioned about HubSpot, they're people that very much focus on culture. And I'll be honest with you, that's where we thought our concept would sort of stop, just in terms of our meat of the bat. So we thought this was going to be a cultural piece for the offices that have beanbag chairs and ping pong tables and, let employees play Xbox in the middle of the day, like those kind of offices. But as we've sort of grown up over time, we're working with, law firms, accounting agencies, manufacturing firms, hospitals. So it really spans the map in terms of clientele.
Who's the typical contact person for you guys? Is it someone in HR, or is it someone in the C-suite?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I would say the quickest answer to the question is HR is often the person that is in charge of some sort of health, wellness, culture, or food initiative. So it's often them. Usually it's sort of like a committee that's involved in this kind of decision. So when we go in and meet with an office, we will often sit down with someone who's in a facilities type role that is responsible for the actual, layout of the organization, managing a bunch of different vendors, working with architects. So someone in facilities is often there. Someone in human resources is often there. And then there's often sort of an office manager administrative type role. So it could be at maybe a smaller office, someone who's actually working the front desk and juggling 19,000 plates at once as an office manager. And then sometimes as we get to bigger offices, it might be an administrator of some sort. So it usually, it's usually some sort of committee that makes up all of those different folks. HR, if there's ever one group that we talk to, it's usually human resources. And then sometimes we bump into C-level executives, maybe a CFO, a founder, or a CEO that hears about our services and gets sort of passionate about workplace culture, or they're foodies, or they're coffee junkies, or whatever, that we talk to them directly. But short answer to the question is human resources is 80% of the time who we're talking to.
Okay, so that kind of leads into my next question, which is what's been the marketing strategy or the customer acquisition strategy for you guys over the last year and a half? How are you finding all these big clients? I would assume it's a combination of a few things. Maybe you can give us some details.
It definitely is a combination of a bunch. So for us, we've heavily relied on sort of a traditional direct sales model. So we're kind of interestingly positioned in that when we call up an office that we think would probably benefit from our services, that has an emphasis on culture, or that is in the right size, whatever, we kind of have interesting luck in an email or a phone call with that office, in that we're talking about kind of a sexy product. We're talking about upgrading the food program. It affects everybody in the office. So if we can say we can bring better food or better coffee or a kegerator of cold brew to the office, generally it doesn't matter who we're talking to. They're like, I want to facilitate this. So, the sort of traditional cold calling or reaching out has been successful for us, frankly. Getting involved in organizations like NERA, New England HR Association, NEBIC, New England Employee Benefits Council, WWCMA, Worksite Wellness Council of Mass. So all of these organizations that are sort of, harnessing human resource managers and providing them with an outlet to network. So that's been a good one for us. We do a lot in channel partnership sales. So I alluded to this earlier, but sort of like in the commercial real estate space, either being direct clients of ours and paying for the LeanBox services themselves, or you might have a broker, a real estate broker that, we're in their ecosystem. And when they move a client from one office to the other, they say, hey, look, like when you implement here, I know you're not going to build out a cafeteria, but you should talk to the folks at LeanBox and Grind Coffee about all the various aspects of what they can do. So that's been really good for us. Obviously, once we're at a place where we're at now, which, is a pretty widespread clientele in the New England area, you do start to get a lot of the HR managers, facilities managers, and office managers sort of talking to each other. It tends to be a pretty small network. So like the ones that are most interesting to me are like the administrators at law firms. They all know each other. Everybody in the New England area, they network, they go to meetups together. It's the same with HR managers in biotech and pharma. So the good thing is once you sort of get into these networks, you can start to, build a good reputation and spread throughout that as well. So yeah, to your point, when you first asked the question, there hasn't been like one tactic or anything that has brought us to where we are today. It's been a combination of a lot of different things, including some cool stuff that happened along the way in terms of press and some stories that have come our way that have also, flooded some leads into our inbox.
I know you guys have some expansion plans on the horizon. Maybe you can tell us more about that too.
Yeah, so we're sort of at the tail end of, we've been careful about our growth, because a lot of this is, as some people describe it, it's like building the plane mid-flight, right? So we are building the outline for city over city growth using Boston and New England as our testing ground. So the way I would describe where we're at from a phase standpoint is we're at the tail end of that in terms of, solidifying our product, understanding all the ins and outs of the supply chain, really just developing the roadmap for city over city growth. So that process starts roughly in about 6 weeks. So we will be expanding to Chicago in about 6 weeks. That's our next pin on the map. And then our roadmap from there is to sort of come back to the East Coast and head down. So New York City, Connecticut, New Jersey, all out of one distribution center. Then we'll move down to DC, Baltimore shortly after that. Then it sort of becomes a game of like how quickly can we expand? Can we grow into 3, 4, 5 cities at once? And we have a lot of ideas that would probably take 4 hours of podcast to get into as to how we might do that. But I think after we get a couple more cities under our belt, we'll sort of take a breath and see how we want to do the real massive explosive growth.
What are the most complex things that need to happen in order for you to hit the ground running in Chicago? Is it hiring people? Is it, putting together a marketing strategy? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, I guess, is the short way to answer it. There is, specific to city over city growth, it's sort of, we're hoping that roadmap is fairly well clear. It's more just a lot of the complication that goes on for the company as a whole. So what I mean by that is like a lot of the stuff that we've done over the last 2.5 years has been the most complex. So developing all these different products from scratch, understanding a supply chain that, hasn't been done before. Like the idea of having fresh food out of an unattended retail office that has 130 people, like that hasn't really happened before. So understanding, that whole supply chain, understanding the pain points of our buyer, developing even just some weird offshoots, like developing a coffee roastery that's 25,000 square feet so we can supply our clients with the best, least expensive coffee available. So the good thing is, to answer your question, like a lot of the complication is what we've dealt with over the last 2.5 years. So we're kind of headed into the market with a loaded gun. The city over city, the complications are what you would think of. We're hub and spoke. So, there's a lot of operations and feet on the ground. We're not just like an online platform that, you can snap your fingers and you're in Topeka, Kansas and Miami, Florida overnight. So there's some infrastructure that needs to get involved. There is some supply chain that we actually need to have, warehouse, trucks, etc. So some complications as it relates to that. And we have a few different versions of how we're going to attempt that model. The one in Chicago is actually a joint venture with an existing organization there that, will speed things up and allow us to understand city over city growth really fast, I think.
Will you now have to begin raising more money in order to fuel these expansion plans?
We don't have to. There's, I think much like a lot of other startups, you sort of have some decision points that you can make just in terms of how fast you want to do things. Luckily, we are a little bit old school in some ways, even though we're super technology focused, we're innovation focused. The good thing is we're an organization that also sort of makes money. We're not like a traditional, startup that goes 5-6 years without contributing to the bottom line. We're a profitable organization, and we can find ways to grow organically, or we can take on more funds and do sort of rapid expansion and explosive growth. And that's oversimplifying it. There's a lot of other levers that we can pull in between those two extremes, and we're sort of still exploring that. We're going to see how the next city goes. We just took on our latest round of funding a few months back, and we're in a pretty good financial position to be able to grow. So we're gonna play this by ear.
Yeah, there's definitely two types of businesses out there. Even on the investor back side, where you have the companies that try to get to cash flow positive or profitability as quickly as possible. That's kind of the way that I've always liked to try to do it. And then the companies that just grow at all costs. The Snapchats, the Ubers. I mean, billions of dollars a year in revenue and billions of dollars a year in losses, or at least hundreds of millions in some cases. And it's just crazy that they keep getting funded in hopes that the valuations keep going up and that someday that everyone gets to cash in. But who knows if those companies will ever make money. So I certainly respect the companies that can be profitable.
Yeah, and we're definitely more, I would say, we're definitely more towards the spectrum of a company that, heads towards profitability and has a model. I mean, at least one of the things that we wanted to do is be able to prove out that the model itself, can monetize in one city and profit in one city. There are plenty of different avenues that we're exploring that we can blanket 30 cities through sort of other types of funding and other types of partnership. And we may go down that path. That's definitely a possibility. But for us, it was really important to know that we were building a business that was a stable business, was a profitable business, and just the model made sense. And it's funny how, to your point about Snapchat and companies like that, it's funny how non-traditional that thinking has become.
What have been the biggest challenges? If you could kind of just point to two challenges or maybe even mistakes that you guys made over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, well, the first thing is I wish obviously we had started with the corporate food service concept, right, and the ability to dive right into that market without having a pit stop in the quick service restaurant space. So that would have been nice, but hindsight's 2020. I think, all right, so for us, the way that I always describe our biggest challenge is pretty simple, but complex in execution. The simple problem is that everything we see in our long-term vision requires a ton of innovation in many different areas at once to be able to implement. So to give examples, some of which I'm repeating from earlier, but the examples would be like if someone had created a refrigerator that was a smart refrigerator that allowed us to retail salads and soups and sandwiches and things of that nature in the way we wanted them to do it, we may have just used that in our overall program. If we found that there was a supply chain of coffee that wasn't hitting 5 hands before it went to the office, we wouldn't have built out a roastery for our coffee, and we may not have gone down the path of owning our own coffee brand. So all of these things, it's sort of a gift and a curse. We have these little sort of like IPs and advantages that we're developing, but at the same time, I guess your question was what's challenging. What's challenging for us is the fact that we have a lot of innovation going on at once. We're a tech company, we're a supply chain company, we're building a brand in the corporate food service space. We're sort of all these things at once, which now that we're a couple years into it, I'm very glad we did that, but it's just, it's a lot of plates to spin up in the air, a lot of balls to juggle at once.
And it's a lot of kind of learning on the go, right? I mean, there's not necessarily a roadmap of another company that's already done this before. I mean, you guys are kind of reinventing the space.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, in a lot of these different spaces, it's just take for example the platform we're building for our human resource managers and office managers to log on and understand their food program. To your point, there's no roadmap to copy. There's no one that's doing that right now. We just know it's of extreme value, and we rely on our customers to be able to tell us what they would want in that platform, and we test things and we see if that's of value over time. So there's no roadmap in a lot of these different spaces, and that goes with something as simple as the supply chain too, like the knowing what needs to go where, when, knowing what needs to be pulled, all of the different analytics on what's working and what's not working at sites. There's no exact roadmap as to how that's done before the way that we're doing it. So, as I said, it's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a bad thing in that it's complex. It's a complex business, but it's a good thing in that we're pretty good as a business in executing these things, and it develops more and more IP for us over time that makes our business pretty complex to copycat. So, we're not a pharmaceutical company coming out with the next great medicine that's got IP behind it in that realm, but we've just innovated in so many different areas, and we have sort of a small but interesting and complex IP in so many different areas that it's hard to duplicate.
What's the most surprising thing you've learned thus far about the food industry?
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, I think the one thing that resonates when you say that question is it's not surprising to me that we have a health epidemic on our hands as it relates to sort of what people are eating and what that's doing to their bodies. So, the further you get into this business, you start to realize like who controls what, and that there are only so many suppliers that are just slapping their brands on everything, and that the bigger you get as a supplier, the more power you have over how you get that food out to the world. So like one of the things that we really are super passionate about is empowering smaller brands to get their product to market. So the story I always tell, the one that's my favorite, is we worked with Newgrounds Food, which was a startup out of Northeastern. Two Northeastern students made an edible coffee bar that we were like their first big client. Now they're doing really well. They're in like Barnes and Noble and all these other retail outlets. But for them to get into Whole Foods or Costco or Stop and Shop, it's really hard. And the big brands have like a pretty good stranglehold on this. So I guess what I didn't realize before we got into the space was sort of the self-fulfilling power that food brands have as they grow, their ability to gain shelf life and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes it's not what's best for the client, sort of for the customer, from both a health standpoint and sort of an introduction to unique and interesting food standpoint. So that's been an interesting journey for me to follow, and it's specifically of near and dear to my heart because I think we can help change that by getting into 8,000 corporate offices across a bunch of different cities and being able to constantly introduce people to new, innovative, unique, and certainly healthy brands, hopefully in a way that's not being done right now.
If you could go back a couple of years, would you do anything differently? I mean, that could be marketing, that could be hiring, that could be funding, that could be anything really.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think, I would say this, I don't think it's been, the whole thing's been a learning journey, right? Because we don't come from the corporate food service background, and because a lot of these services that we're building are new and unique and interesting, certainly I'd love to have the knowledge that we have collectively as a team now about what works and what doesn't. But I wouldn't even say that I would do anything differently, because I think we've had to go through what we've gone through to understand what our place is in the market and what innovations need to exist. So, I guess if anything, maybe escalating the speed with which we learn about our market. But I think we've gotten to a place where we're really good at that. We have a really solid product line, and I think, as I said, I think without going through the journey, we wouldn't know what we know, and without making mistakes or learning what we've learned, we wouldn't be where we are.
I guess the last question here before we wrap up, because I know we're running a little late here, but lots of good stuff that you share. I didn't want to cut you off. What's been your recruiting strategy thus far, and how does that change kind of from city to city? Like, how are you? You're in Boston, so if you're hiring people in Boston, you can probably meet them face to face. But what happens now when you start expanding, out to Chicago and then down the coast? How do you keep the right people on the team and retain them and build the right culture?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say to that is like our company is 100% reliant on having an excellent team implementing, because there's so much going on within our organization from a tech standpoint, account management, sales and business development, marketing, finance. I mean, there's just so many different aspects of our organization that require smart people to be doing innovative things, that hiring the right people is critical. So to date, the best strategy for us has been sort of one of two different avenues have worked out best for us. Avenue one has been through referral. So people that someone here knows within their network, or I know within my network, or whatever. Referrals are really great for us because we love our culture now. Generally, if it's by referral, it only helps build that same sort of culture and solidify that same culture. The other piece is we have a lot of people, just because our name is sort of getting out there and we're in the ecosystem, that people proactively reach out to us with a lot of sort of content like this. They'll say, you might not be hiring right now. This is what I do. This is what I've been doing. I'd love to jump on a call, grab a coffee, or, talk about future opportunities. So a lot of our most recent hires over the last year were people that at some point had that proactive reach out. They're a self-selecting population because they were super passionate about what we were doing. And we had the ability to bring them on at some point, 1, 2, 3, 6 months after they reached out, because we would be in a meeting and we'd say, okay, we need an account manager to handle our growing population of clients. I just talked to someone 3-4 months ago. Let's reach out to them and see if they're still in the job market. That has been really awesome for us. And I think that that's specific to what I said earlier, which is that it's a self-selecting population that is passionate about what we do, is probably interested in being really proactive because they made a proactive effort to reach out to us, even though there wasn't a specific job posting. So the city over city thing, I'll let you know. I mean, that's going to be different, right? So some of that depends on whether or not we're doing sort of joint ventures in each new city, and we can rely on some of our feet on the street. I know it's going to be really critical for us for having someone at the helm of each new city as a sort of general manager, almost Uber style situation for each city. I think that's going to be critical, and then everything flows down from that.
Awesome. Well, let's end it there, man. I know you're a busy guy. You got a lot of things on your plate probably for the rest of the day, so I'll let you get back to that stuff. What's the best way that we can connect with you online? Do you use any social media? And then, of course, the company's website, which is leanbox.com.
Yeah, of course. Leanbox.com. You can find everything. We're on Instagram at LeanBox, and you can tweet us at EatLean. But best place to find out anything about us is for sure at leanbox.com. Certainly reach out to us if you're in the New England area, but we're expanding city over the course of the next year and a half, 2 years. So hopefully if you're not in the New England area, hopefully we'll be in your backyard sooner than later. But yeah, leanbox.com, hit us up on there.
Awesome. And I know some CEOs in the Boston area that could definitely do some introductions for. So maybe you're talking to some of those companies already, maybe not, but it doesn't hurt to do an introduction. So
certainly appreciate it.
You got it. Really glad to talk. Glad we got a chance to do this interview, and certainly wish you the best. And keep kicking ass.
Absolutely. You too. Thanks for the time.
You got it, man. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.